Welcome, friends. Revise with me homeopathic remedy Glonine. We are dealing with part 5 symptom review from guiding symptoms of our materia medica, and we are comparing it with Allen's keynotes. This is a good comparative study for 4th BHMS students and interns. I am Dr. V.K. Chauhan, homeopathic physician. The guiding symptoms of our materia medica has got 10 volumes and it is written by Contestine Heing. It is very peculiar book and certain facts about guiding symptoms of our materia medica are as under. It contains the cure symptoms. Therefore, it stands as a complement to all previous works in our materia medica. The symptoms of each drug are grouped under 48 headings or chapters. The arrangement is in alphabetical order. 4 grades are used to represent each symptom according to their relative importance. It helps tremendously in choice of the symptom. All the available work on materia medica before the arrival of Hering's guiding symptom were based on the purity of proving symptoms. We had no other materia medica which was based on the confirmatory clinical symptoms. So these are the 48 chapters or heads under which the drug has been discussed. Here we find majority symptoms of first grade are present in the mind section, which is representing in the red line, inner head, sight and eyes, female sexual organs, pregnancy, parturition, heart, pulse and circulation, lower limbs, nerves, temperature and weather, and fever. You will find second grade symptoms like chapter 2 sensorium, chapter 4 outer head, 6 hearing and ears, 7th smell and nose. So you will find it is in blue color. And then you will find third grade symptoms like hypochondria, chapter number 48, chapter number 18, hypochondria. Then we have like rest, position, motion, chapter number 35, chapter number 38, like time, attack and periodicity, locality and direction, sensations. So these are the areas where you will find most of third grade symptom, and fourth grade symptoms are represented in black and white like chapter 27 cough, chapter 46 skin. Let us go ahead. We are going to compare Allen's keynotes PQR1, nervous temperament, plethoric, florid, sensitive woman, persons readily affected. So let us see how much reference we find in guiding symptoms of our materia medica. In PQR1, we find most of the symptoms are in the chapter stage of life and constitution. It is chapter number 47 and relevant uh, text is as under florid, plethoric, sensitive woman. It is given in under second grade. Nervous, sanguine, readily affected persons. Again, it has been having second grade representation. Now we find PQR2, bad effects of mental excitement, fright, fear, mechanical injuries, and their later consequences. For from having the haircut. And we find in the mind section relevant symptoms are bad effects of mental excitement, fright, fear, mechanical contusions and their later consequences. A second grade representation here. Under temperament and weather, chapter number 39, we find bad effects from having haircut, a second grade representation. We go to the PQR3, head troubles from working under gaslight when heat falls on the head, cannot bear heat about the head, heat of stove on walking in the sun. So let us see what we find in guiding symptoms. We find in inner head, chapter 3, troubles of head in typesetters and in men who work under gaslight steadily so that heat falls on head, bad results from sunstroke, can't bear any heat about the head, can't walk in sun, must walk in shade or carry an umbrella, can't bear the heat from stove. A second grade representation we find here. Now, PQR4A, cerebral congestion or alternate congestion of head and heart. This particular symptom we find in heart, pulse, and circulation, chapter 29, and it tells us about plethoric female had since she began to menstruate attacks of blood to head alternately with rush of blood to heart, with pale or red face 5 or 6 times a day. At same time, she lost her consciousness and fell down, alternate palpitation and cerebral congestion with loss of consciousness, convulsions and foam before mouth. It is a second grade representation and this congestive symptom is associated with epileptiform seizures. We go to PQR4A, head feels enormously large as if skull were too small for brain, and we find a kind of reference in the inner head chapter 3. Brain feels as if too heavy and too large for skull with raving headache. This is second grade representation and again we find the first grade representation, sensation as if skull were too small, as if brain were attempting to burst it. Now we go to PQR4A, sunstroke and sun headache, increases and decreases every day with sun, and symptoms are located in inner head, chapter 3, sunstroke, loss of consciousness, sensation and motion, countenance expressionless, pulse full, slow and intermittent, respiration slow and labored, pupils dilated, with eyes turned up, jaws firmly clenched, limbs relaxed and motionless, occasional muscular tremors. This is a second grade representation and gives here the feature of sunstroke where the patient is unconscious. Headache produced by powerful rays of sun. This is sun headache, second grade representation. Headache begins with warm weather and lasts all summer. Increases and decreases every day with sun. Great sensitiveness to rays of sun and to pressure from covering of head. This is a second grade representation. We go to PQR4B, terrific shocks in the head, synchronous with the pulse, and we find reference in the guiding symptoms Inner head, chapter 3, shocks in brain, synchronous with every pulsation of arteries, grade 2 representation. Sensations we find in chapter 43, shocks in the brain, synchronous with pulsation of arteries, violent beating in head. It is all fourth grade representation here in sensations. We go to the PQR4C, throbbing, pulsating headache, holds head with both hands, could not lie down, the pillow would beat, and we find reference heart, pulse and circulation, chapter 29, violent palpitation of heart with throbbing carotids, pulsating headache in forehead and between temples. This is a first grade representation here. Under inner head, chapter 3, you will find holds the head with both hands, presses sinciput, presses most probably occiput. Rest position motion, chapter 35 tells us lying on the back or sides, pillow to beat, purring noise in the region of heart. This is a fourth grade representation here. We go to chapter PQR4D, brain feels too large, full, bursting. Blood seems to be pumped upwards, throbs at every jar, step, and pulse. We have the reference here, inner head. Brain feels as if too heavy, too large for a skull with raving headache. It is a second grade representation here. And sensation as if skull were too small, as if brain were attempting to burst it. It is a first grade representation. Congestion to head, sudden, violent, throbbing, felt with every pulse, at every step, or jarring. Blood mounts from neck, throat, or chest, from occiput towards eyes. It is a second grade representation here. Let us go to the PQR4E, intense congestion of brain from delayed or suppressed menses, headache in place of menses, and we find reference to this under female sexual organs chapter 23, intense congestion of brain induced in plethoric constitution by sudden suppression of menses or appearing in place of menses. A first grade representation. Disturbance in intracranial circulation at times of menopause. This is a second grade representation. Instead of menses, headache, congestion of head, pale face, worse in the warm room, better when walking in cold air, diarrhea, and fainting is a fourth grade representation here. We'll go to the PQR4F, headache occurring after profuse uterine hemorrhage, rush of blood to head in pregnant woman. And we find reference here under female sexual organs, chapter 23, headaches occurring after profuse uterine hemorrhage, a first grade representation, and in pregnancy, parturition, lactation, chapter 24, we find rush of blood to head in pregnant women, especially with paleness of face, loss of consciousness, falling down insensible, sometimes with cold sweat, especially in face. We go to the PQR5, violent palpitation with throbbing in carotids, heart section labored, oppressed, blood seems to rush to heart and rapidly to head. We have PQR5 references under heart, pulse, and circulation, chapter 29, and this is the first grade representation here. Violent palpitation of heart with throbbing carotids, pulsating headache in forehead and between temples. We have in heart sensation of fullness, heaviness, and heat with labored breathing, beating of heart. is second grade representation. And again we find the first grade representation here. Blood seems to rush to heart and mount rapidly into head. First grade. Now PQR6 tells us about convulsions of children from cerebral congestion, meningitis, during dentition, cases that seem to call for belladonna, and we find the references under section 36 nerves. Here, epileptic convulsions with congestion to head and heart, a first grade representation is seen. We have strong, healthy looking child subject to convulsions at intervals of a few months, attacks preceded by drowsiness, soon after which child fell into convulsive state with clenching and jerking upwards of fist and legs. Face is red, eyes rolled outward and upward, then followed a soporific condition lasting several hours, followed by another convulsion. It is a second grade representation here. And then we also find great congestion of head and heart during spasm. He spreads his fingers and toes as under. Second grade. We come to PQR7. Children get sick in the evening when sitting before an open coal fire or falling asleep there. This reference comes under temperature and weather, section 39. Children get sick in the night after sitting opposite an open coal fire or falling asleep there. It is a first grade representation here. We go to the PQR8, flashes of heat at the climacteric with the catamania. And here we find reference attacks, periodicity, chapter 41, and it tells us every day during climacteric period, flashes of heat. It is a fourth grade representation. So friends, thank you very much for patient listening and watching. Sharing is caring.